how I love your Torah. It is my meditation all the day. You through your word have made me wiser than mine enemies, for they are ever with me. I have more understanding than all my teachers, for your testimonies are my meditation. I understand more than the ancients, because I keep your precepts. I have refrained my feet from every evil way, that I might keep your word. I have not departed from your judgments, for you have taught me. How sweet are your words unto my taste, yea, sweeter than honey to my mouth. Through your precepts I get understanding. Therefore I hate every false way. Nun. Your word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. I have sworn, and I will perform it, that I will keep your right judgments. I am afflicted very much. Quicken me, O Yahuwah, according unto your word. Accept, I beg you, the free will offerings of my mouth, O Yahuwah, and teach me your judgments. My soul is continually in my hand, yet do I not forget your Torah. The wicked have laid a snare for me, yet I erred not from your precepts. Your testimonies have I taken as a heritage forever, for they are the rejoicing of my heart. I have inclined my heart to perform your statutes always, even unto the end. Hallelujah. Samak. I hate vain thoughts, but your Torah do I love. You are my hiding place and my shield. I hope in your word. Depart from me, you evildoers, for I will keep the words of my Elohim. Uphold me according unto your word, that I may live, and let me not be ashamed of my hope. Hold me up, and I shall be safe, and I will have respect unto your statutes continually. You have trodden down all them that err from your statutes, for their deceit is falsehood. You put away all the wicked of the earth like dross. Therefore I love your testimonies. My flesh trembles for fear of you, and I am afraid of your judgments. Ayan. I have done judgment and justice. Leave me not to my oppressors. Be surety for your servant for good. Let not the proud oppress me. Mine eyes fail for your salvation, and for the word of your set apartness. Deal with your servant according unto your mercy, and teach me your statutes. I am your servant. Give me understanding, that I may know your testimonies. It is time for you, Yahuwah, to work, for they have made void your Torah. Therefore, I love your commandments, your word above gold, yea, above fine gold. Therefore I esteem all your precepts concerning all things to be right, and I hate every false way. Pa, or pay. Your testimonies are wonderful, therefore does my soul keep them. The entrance of your word give light, it gives understanding unto the simple. I opened my mouth and panted, for I longed for your commands. Look upon me, and be merciful unto me, as you used to do unto those that love your name. Order my steps in your word, and let not any iniquity have dominion over me. Deliver me from the oppression of men, so will I keep your precepts. Make your face to shine upon your servant, and teach me your statutes. Rivers of waters run down mine eyes, because they keep not your Torah. Zadi. Righteous, set apart are you, O Yahuwah, and upright are your judgments. Your testimonies that you have commanded are right and very faithful. My zeal has consumed me, because mine eyes have forgotten your words. Your word is very pure, therefore your servant loves it. I am small and despised. I forget your precepts. Thy righteousness, your set apartness, is an everlasting set apartness, and your Torah is the truth. Trouble and anguish have taken hold on me, yet your commands are my delight. The set apartness of your testimonies is everlasting. Give me understanding, and I shall live. Kuf. I cried with my whole heart. Hear me, O Yahuwah. I will keep your statutes. I cried unto you, save me, and I shall keep your testimonies. I prevented the dawning of the morning and cried. I hoped in your word. Mine eyes prevent the night watches, that I might meditate in your word. Hear my voice according unto your loving kindness, O Yahuwah. Quicken me according to your judgment. They draw nigh, they draw near that follow after mischief. They are far from your Torah. You are near, O Yahuwah, and all your words, your commandments are truth. Concerning your testimonies, I have known of old that you have founded them forever. Rash. Consider mine affliction and deliver me, for I do not forget your Torah. Plead my cause and deliver me. Quicken me according to your word. Salvation, Yasha, is far from the wicked, for they seek not your statutes. Great are your tender mercies, O Yahuwah. Quicken me according to your judgments. Many are my persecutors and mine enemies, yet do I not decline from your testimonies. I beheld the transgressors and was grieved, because they kept not your word. Consider how I love your precepts. Quicken me, O Yahuwah, according to your loving kindness. Your word is true from the beginning, and every one of your right judgments endures forever. Shan. Princes have persecuted me without a cause, but my heart stands in awe of your word. I rejoice at your word as the one that finds great spoil. I hate and abhor lying, but your Torah do I love. Hallelujah. 7 times a day do I praise you because of your set apart judgments. Great Shalum have they which love your Torah, and nothing shall offend them. Yahuwah, I have hoped for your salvation and done your judgments. My soul has kept your testimonies, and I love them exceedingly. I have kept your precepts and your testimonies, for all my ways are before you. 2 or ta. Let my cry come near before thee, O Yahuwah. Give me understanding according to your word. Let my supplication come before you. Deliver me according to your word. My lips shall utter praise when you have taught me your statutes. My tongue shall speak of your word, for all your commands are righteous, are set apart. Let your hand help me, for I have chosen your precepts. I have longed for your salvation, your Yasha, O Yahuwah, and your Torah is my delight. Let my soul live, and it shall praise you, and let your judgments help me. I have gone astray like a lost sheep. Seek your servant, for I do not forget your commandments. Hallelujah. All praise, honor, and esteem be unto Yahuwah. We esteem his set apart name. Hallelujah. We barak his great name, and we praise Yahuwah for his set apart word. Hallelujah. Yahuwah. Shalom to you, family. Once again, it is great to be in the midst of Yahuwah's set apart people. Hallelujah. A people who desire to serve Yahuwah in truth. Hallelujah. Whose desires the truth, the whole truth, and absolutely nothing but the truth. And that means, as the writer of Tahlim 119 stated, that we seek to live by all his word. Hallelujah. Praise Father. Well, we have a lot to cover today. We hope to get started in our study on Shabbat rather quickly. Tahlim 119 It's a song, it's poetry. And as Dahoud was crying out, he associated the things that he was going through. He looked at the table, he looked at the Aleph Bayat, and he saw how his life is affected and the promises that the house holds for him. So basically, perhaps you've heard me say this in the room here, family, that the name of the table is the Aleph Bayat, and it holds everything. It tells us everything that we need to know about Yahuwah and about ourselves. And so basically what he is doing is he is using the table to remind himself and even also to call Yahuwah's attention to his promise toward him. And so he uses the pictures to do that. And so each stanza begins by reflecting on the essence of a picture. And that's what it's about. Today we are going to a study on the Shabbat, and I hope, I hope I want to cover as much as possible today. I'm going to explain why I'm going to this study now. I've always intended to go into an in-depth study on the Shabbat, and it hasn't happened. We have been studying the feast, of course, and of course Shabbat is one of the feasts. Shabbat is a weekly feast, and as we know, there are only 3 annual feasts. Shabbat is a weekly feast, but just as the other feasts are greatly misunderstood, Shabbat is also very greatly misunderstood. Today, what we hope to do, I want to begin with some of the standard scriptures that you hear concerning Shabbat. Then I want to go to other scriptures that Yahuwah gave that deals with Shabbat and his expectation concerning Shabbat and the different experiences that we as a people, how different experiences affect us concerning his feast. We have been looking at that. We want to look at that concerning Shabbat also, along with the commands of Scripture concerning Shabbat. We want to know if whether or not doing any kind of work on Shabbat is profaning Shabbat, in spite of the reasoning. If a person does anything on Shabbat, are there times when certain things are allowed on the Shabbat? Or is anything and everything that is done on Shabbat profaning Shabbat? We want to answer that question from the scriptures. We also want to know if by working on Shabbat, for somebody who is compelled to, if working on Shabbat, if that means that that person have taken the mark of the beast. There are people out there teaching this, and we want to examine all of this by the scriptures and by the contextual scriptures. We also want to see what the scriptures have to say concerning Yahuwah's expectation of Shabbat, and even when it comes to captivity. According to the scriptures, does Yahuwah have one expectation for us while we're in the land and another expectation when we're led captive? According to the scriptures, we want to find that out. Does Yahuwah have different expectations concerning his feast and concerning Shabbat? We know concerning the feast because we have gone over that. We looked at the 3 annual feasts, and we know clearly, according to the scriptures, there are different expectations as to whether we're in the land or we're out of the land. He has set up different expectations there. Is it true for the weekly Shabbat also? We want to get an answer to this from the scriptures. Okay, I want to take this opportunity to make this lesson not just about us here that are seeking to walk in the truth and who is in the process of awakening. I also would like to take this opportunity to let this lesson be of help to anyone who may come later on in the future seeking for truth concerning Shabbat. So in other words, our people who are still in church, hopefully they'll be able to come across this video, whether it's a year from now, 10 years from now, however long Yahuwah tarries, and he's still pulling out his elect. It is my hope that they will be able to come across this video and it will be of help to them. I do recognize that as an individual, a lot of things that Yahuwah has allowed me to see in his scripture and that I do proclaim, and I don't believe it's that other people don't see it, but I recognize that a lot of our people, it's easier to stick with tradition than to go with truth. It's not that people out there aren't seeing what the scripture says concerning the feast and other things. In some cases, some people don't see it, but some do. But peer pressure, because of peer pressure, some people choose to stick with tradition rather than truth. Now, I'm an individual who have always been, I've always felt like I'm one in the minority as far as rejection. I've always felt that way. I've grown accustomed to the whole matter of rejection. I've really grown accustomed to that, and because of that, you see, that goes back to a child growing up. I've always been one who have to learn to entertain myself, you see. And so because of that, that what has conditioned me now, when I come across things that contradict what I am accustomed to, as long as it's truth, I don't have any problem turning to it and proclaiming it, even though I know it's going to put me at odds with those who are popular and accepted, you see. So I know that there are a lot of things that I say that put me at odds with a lot of people who are out there teaching. But yet, in the midst of it all, I praise Yahuwah that his people, his elect, will wake up. You see, Yahuwah will not leave his elect in ignorance. Yahuwah will not leave his elect in ignorance. I say that again, Yahuwah will not leave his elect in ignorance. If we are the people of Yahuwah, we will not be left in ignorance and tradition. You see, but Yahuwah is going to mess us up by tearing down our traditions because he loves us too much to leave us stuck in our tradition. So he's going to mess up our day by tearing down our traditions eventually. And that's all right. It's okay for Yahuwah to mess up my day because I don't want no parts of tradition. What I want is truth. You see, so mess me up, Yahuwah. Mess up my day. I don't want no tradition. Mess me up. You see. Expose every lie that I have clung to and every lie that I have told. Expose it and help me to walk according to your truth because that's the only thing that will save me is your truth. I don't want no tradition. I want truth. You see, I am very familiar. I'm very aware of people. I know some of them by name and some of them I don't know who they are. But over the years, people have I've received messages from people on Facebook or through YouTube who send me these messages, some of them telling me off. Just out of the blue, I get a message, an email from somebody, and they're just telling me off. And they're telling me how I need to stop misleading the people of Yahuwah, and I need to get offline and go sit somewhere. And, you know, they just tell me off real good that I'm teaching falsehood concerning different things. I get messages like that from people. And then I get messages from people who say, you know, so and so, somebody told me not to have anything to do with you, not to fellowship with you because you teach against Torah. You know, you're teaching falsehood. You see, in this room, in this fellowship, since we've been on Pal Talk, I've seen a lot of people come and go. You see, I have seen a whole lot of people come and go. I really have. So it's not uncommon to see somebody here for a couple weeks and then they're no longer. Because at some point the truth will offend someone. Okay? It's unfortunate that that's the way it is, but there's also something else at work. There's also something else at work. And why am I sharing this? I'm sharing it to make this point. In that, while somebody may kick against the truth initially, because that's the way we are, family, because we have inherited many great lies. Okay? We have inherited many great lies as a people. And so naturally, when all you're accustomed to is hearing lies, when anything comes our way that sounds contrary, goes contrary to what we are accustomed to, then what we are going to do is our first response is to fight against it. Our first response is to fight against it. You see? That's our first response. Our first response is to fight against it. Now, the difference is that some people will forever fight against the truth, where some people will eventually, even though we started off by fighting against it, the Ruach, Yahuwah will not allow us to stay fighting against his truth. So he will not leave his elect in ignorance. And that's a promise that he has made to his people. He will not leave his elect in ignorance. You see, we might be in one place today where we are confronted with truth and we can't see it for what it is. And everything in us, and we go and we'll even tell somebody off and tell them what you're proclaiming is false, you see. But only to find out later that, uh-oh, you know what? That person wasn't the one proclaiming falsehood. I was the one fighting against the truth. Look at Shahul, for example. Shahul was fighting against the truth. He was killing the believers, those who believe in Yahuwah or Mashiach. He was killing them. He was persecuting them. You see? Only to find out that he was the one that was wrong. And while he was killing and persecuting the believers, because he had a twisted understanding of Torah. You see, that's what it came back to. Shahul had a twisted understanding of Torah. And so while he was killing and persecuting the believers, because according to him, they were not following Torah, because according to Torah, but this is not according to Torah. But Shahul's understanding was that according to Torah, Yahuwah is not a man. So any man who come proclaiming to be Yahuwah have got to be a false teacher. And for that reason, Shahul fought against any person who believed in Yahuwah walking among us. Just like there are a lot of Shahuls out there today. There's a whole lot of Shahul before the change out there today. You see, before Yahuwah got a hold of him, there are a whole lot of them out there today. You see, and so and what's interesting is they're bashing Shahul, but they're doing the same thing that the false teacher Shahul was doing, because while Shahul taught that what he was preaching was Torah, he was actually not preaching Torah, because Torah is all about Mashiach, Yahuwah manifesting himself in the flesh to deliver his people. The very word Torah tells us that. The very word Torah points to Yahuwah in the flesh, you see. And so the only redemption the only hope that we as a people have ever had is for Yahuwah to come and manifest in the flesh to redeem us, because that's the only way we were going to be redeemed, you see, bought back to him. So Shahul had zeal, but he lacked understanding. And while he thought that he was teaching and believing and living Torah, he was actually living against Torah. You see, he was living against Torah. Okay, we are going to our study on Shabbat today, and I'm going to begin by saying that I don't want this lesson just to be for us, but for others who may come into this truth later, seeking the truth. They might still be in churches right now. They might not be going to a church anywhere. People of Yasharal who just don't know who they are, but they might come across this truth, and I hope that it is of help to them. And so I have a video that I came across that I want to share for the purpose of those who are confused about the Sabbath. Okay, when is the Sabbath? So this is a video where the Catholic Church is boasting. They're trying to make the point that they are the only true church. And to prove that they are the only true church, they have to point to signs and wonders that they have been able to do that would validate that they are chosen by the mighty one that they serve, which is the pagan deity God. Okay, so they want to prove this. So in trying to prove their point, they tell the truth. So they use the Sabbath as an example. What they're stating is that the only reason why you have people all over the world keeping Sunday as the Sabbath is because we, give me a second, the only reason why we have people all over the world keeping the Sabbath is because we declared it to be so. And so that's why the world is keeping the Sabbath. Okay, so what they're saying is we changed the Sabbath and the world obeyed.
I have repeatedly offered $1,000 to anyone who can prove to me from the Bible alone that I am bound to keep Sunday holy. There is no such law in the Bible. It is a law of the Holy Catholic Church alone. The Bible says, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." The Catholic Church says, "No, by my divine power I abolish the Sabbath day and command you to keep holy the first day of the week." And lo, the entire civilized world bows down in a reverent obedience to the command of the Holy Catholic Church. T. N. Wright, CSSR, in a lecture at Hartford, Kansas, February 18, 1884. The Catholic Church for over 1,000 years before the existence of a Protestant, by virtue of her divine mission, changed the day from Saturday to Sunday. The Catholic Mirror, September 23, 1893. Question: which is the Sabbath day? Answer: Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question: why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer: we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church in the Council of Laodicea, AD 336, transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. Peter Geierman, The Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, 2nd edition, 1910, page 50. Question: have you any other way of proving that the Church has power to institute festivals of precept and Saturday to Sunday? Peter Geierman, The Convert's Catechism. Religionists agree with her. She could not have substituted the observance of Sunday, the first day of the week, for the observance of Saturday, the seventh day, a change for which there is no scriptural authority. Stephen Keenan, A Doctrinal Catechism, page 174. There is but one church on the face of the earth which has the power, or claims power, to make laws binding on the conscience, binding before God, binding under penalty of hellfire. For instance, the institution of Sunday. What right has any other church to keep this day? You answer by virtue of the third commandment. The papacy changed the fourth commandment and called it the third, which says, "Remember that thou keep holy the Sabbath day." But Sunday is not the Sabbath. Any schoolboy knows that Sunday is the first day of the week. I have repeatedly offered $1,000 to anyone who will prove by the Bible alone that Sunday is the day we are bound to keep, and no one has called for the money. It was the Holy Catholic Church that changed the day of rest from Saturday, the seventh day, to Sunday, the first day of the week. T. N. Wright, CSSR, in a lecture delivered in 1893.
Thank you, Bishop.
So, for those who will see this video sometime in the future, and you're in church, or you came out of the church and you're looking for answers, then you heard it from the horse's mouth. And even when I use the whatever you will call that figure of speech, the horse's mouth, it's not just a figure of speech, but it's also literal, because the Catholic Church is the horse. You see, the Catholic Church serves the horse. They serve Jesus, or Jesus, or in Abari it's Jesus, the horse. And so you heard it from the horse's mouth, where in an effort to prove that they are the church, and which is okay, it's quite all right, they are the church, because Yahuwah's people is not the church. The scriptures does not refer to us as the church. Church is actually reference to a pagan deity, Kirk or Sirs, and so it's okay for them to brag about them being the church. I have no contention with them concerning that. And so what you saw was a host of truth, where they made it plain that the only way that we have the power that we have, in other words, we declared, number one, we changed the days. YAHUAH numbered the days. We changed them. We named the days. And so we named the days after the deities that we serve. So now we have the day of the sun. We named the day, the first day of the week, we named it Sunday, because in the video you'll hear him refer to the first day of the week, and he called it Sunday, the day of the sun. And so we have changed, we have renamed the days. Not only have we renamed the days, we have reshuffled the days. And so instead of the seventh day being Shabbat, we, given the power that we have declared the first day to be the Sabbath. And it is evident that we have the power to do so, because we said it and the world obeyed. The world followed. So that's what that video was all about. They were making the point that they are the church, because no other church on the face of the planet has ever done any such thing. You see, none has the power to do such. And one should know that the Catholic Church is the only religious organization that has a seat in the United Nations, and a voting seat. You see, a voting seat. So in other words, if you look at current events today, America and the different countries in Europe, including the Catholic Church, this week or last week, passed a resolution in the United Nations to make illegal Russia's takeover of Crimea. Okay, the United States of America, and other countries in the European Union, which would include the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church is viewed as a country. It is treated as a country state in the United Nations. And so they passed a resolution. Well, they came up with a resolution to declare illegal what Russia did by taking over Crimea over these past couple weeks. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is to show you the kind of power that the Catholic Church holds. Now, there are certain countries in the UN that have voting rights, what's called voting rights. And what that means is, so America has voting rights, Russia has voting rights, China has voting rights, and England has voting rights. There are maybe about 5 countries that have voting rights in the UN. By the way, oh boy, I don't want to get off subject. There are about 5 countries that have voting rights in the UN. Okay, now if all the countries in the UN come up with a resolution The only way that that resolution can be accepted is if all the countries with voting rights vote for or accept the resolution. If 4 of them vote for the resolution, but 1 vote against it, the resolution is voted down. That's the power of having a vote in the UN. So when all these other countries came up, these other 4 countries came up with a resolution to say that what Russia did was illegal, Russia, which has voting rights, stepped up and voted against their resolution, and that canceled the entire resolution. So as far as the UN is concerned now, what Russia did is not illegal. Now, I'm not going to argue for it one way or another. I'm not going to get into that, especially not today. But as far as the UN is concerned, because 1 country voted to say, no, what you 4 are saying is gibberish, then that stands. Well, it's the same thing with the Catholic Church has the same power that Russia has in the UN. The Catholic Church has the same power that the US has in the UN. The Catholic Church has the same power that China has in the UN. You see, the Catholic Church has the same power. That is significant. That is significant. And the Catholic Church is the only religious organization in the world that is a member of the UN, that is treated as a nation. Now, what's interesting is that the scriptures actually tell us this, that she would be this way. The scriptures prophesy it. The scripture tells it that she would be this way, and so it is. It's in our faces. Okay? Now, so that's the same power that she has. So what they're doing in this video, and this is not the first video that I have seen like this. There's another video that I have saved. I think it might have been deleted from YouTube, but there was a video on YouTube where this priest was speaking at a college here in the United States. He was it was a Catholic college, well-known Catholic college. Don't remember the name of it, but he was speaking to the young people there, and it was a pep talk that he was giving them, and he wanted them to know how special they are to be in this school, and the kind of power and prestige that they have available to them if they will take their education seriously, you see. And so in that speech, he pointed out some of the same things that this man pointed out in this video, but he went way further. He went way deeper than what that priest that you just saw pointed out. He talked about the political power that the Catholic Church holds. He talked about how they came to have this power, and it was Ronald Reagan that gave them this power. Okay, it goes into, that video went into far greater detail. Now, that video was recorded by a student or somebody using a cell phone or something, and I guess they had it taken down from YouTube, but it was on there for a while, but it seemed as if they had it taken down because I had it saved and I can't find it anymore. Anyway, so that's the power of the Catholic Church. So here they're boasting of their power. They want to make the point that we are a powerful organization, you see. And in other words, what they're trying to say is that we are elect. We are the elect in the earth. You see, we are the elect. Now, you may be elect by an idol, but certainly not by Yahuwah. You are the wicked servant that Yahuwah has elected to drive his people back to him. You are the wicked servant that Yahuwah, that's the only kind of election that you have on you. You are the wicked servant. You are the dog that Yahuwah has elected to drive his people back to him. That's all you are, the dog that Yahuwah has elected to drive his people back to him. You see, but that's all you are. But talking about the Shabbat, so that is how the 7th-day Shabbat, which the scripture speaks of, was changed, and the Shabbat still stand. But in the minds of many, Shabbat was changed. Shabbat has not changed. You see, Yahuwah's truth has not changed. Okay? And so Shabbat has not changed. But in the minds of many, Shabbat has been changed. Well, that's the reason why in the minds of many they think that Shabbat has been changed from the seventh day to the first day. So I wanted to share that video. So if you are one watching this video looking for answers concerning Shabbat, then that is the first part of the puzzle. That's the first piece of the puzzle. Why do some people call what they call Sunday, pagan Sunday, day of the sun, the Sabbath? And why do some call pagan Saturday? The correct name of the day is the seventh day. The correct name of the day is the seventh day. You see, Yom Shabiyeh, right? Yom Shabiyeh, the seventh day. Why did they change it? Well, it's all the work of the Catholic Church. All right? It's all the work of the Catholic Church. Okay? All the work of the Catholic Church. Now, the truth is, the precepts remain the same throughout the scriptures, but there has been a change in the contract. So there are certain changes in Torah, but not in the way that people perceive them to be, and certainly not in the way that Christianity preaches it, you see. But the scriptures does let us know that there are changes in Torah, but as far as the uprightness of Yahuwah, it remains the same. The means and the methods have been changed. The means and the methods have been changed, but his truth remains the same. That's what we must understand. So Yahuwah's means and methods concerning some things have been changed, but his truth remains steadfast. His truth remains the same. For example, I was having a conversation with my wife this morning. I saw a man the other day in this video, and he was talking about it's up to us to save ourselves. And that sounds good. You see, it sounds good. And there are actually a lot of people out there who teach this, that it's up to us to save ourselves. And that's not true according to the scriptures. You see, it's not true according to the scriptures. Now, we have a role in our salvation, but it's not up to us to save ourselves. Now, there was a time when it was totally up to us to save ourselves, but it was not working out. And so Yahuwah made a change in the contract, you see, and the scriptures makes that clear. So there was a time when it was totally up to Yasharal to save themselves, but it was not working out because of us. There was a fault with the contract, and the fault was with us. And so because there was a fault in the contract, Yahuwah rewrote the contract, you see. And so it's not up to us. Now we have a role in saving ourselves, but it's not up to us to save ourselves. If it was up to us to save ourselves, we would all be destroyed because we are wicked to the core. You see? We are wicked to the core. And that's something that we have to face up to. If not for Yahuwah dwelling in us, we would be no different than our ancestors, who one day they see the great works of Yahuwah, and the next day they forget and turn away from him. You see? And so Yahuwah made a change in the contract. So there are certain changes, but it's not about his standard. It's not about his precept. It's about his method. So there are changes concerning the method, but his precepts remains the same. Okay? Now, let's go back to the establishment of Shabbat. We have a lot of scriptures to get to today, family. And again, I want to deal with some of the standard scriptures that a lot of people go to concerning Shabbat, but then I intend to go to scriptures that people do not touch on. Okay? I intend to go to scriptures that people ignore, and I'd say perhaps willfully ignore. You know, family, we have got to be careful that we're not so zealous that in our zeal, we can be so zealous of something that in our zeal to promote a matter, we actually destroy it. We can be so zealous about the truth that in our zeal to promote the truth, we actually destroy the truth. You see? Okay. So how do we know what day truly is Shabbat? What day really is Shabbat? And the lunar Sabbathist will tell you that the Shabbat changes from week to week. And what's interesting about the lunar the lunar Sabbathist is that the lunar Sabbathist is criticizing the Gregorian calendar, but yet the premise of his old doctrine is rooted in the number system of the Gregorian calendar. So the lunar Sabbathist give you numbers for the Sabbath. Some of them will tell you that the Sabbath is the first day of the moon, the 8th day of the moon, the 15th day of the moon, the 22nd day of the moon, and the 29th day of the moon. That's what some lunar Sabbatists will say. Other lunar Sabbatists will say that the Sabbath is on the 7th day of the moon, the 14th day of the moon, the 21st day of the moon, and the 28th day of the moon. So I've given you 2 so far. Let me go to the next one. Now, those 2 that I pointed out, they're pointing to the moon. You also have lunar Sabbatists that will say that the Sabbath is on the 7th day of the month, the 14th day of the month. Now, there's a difference now between month and moon, okay? So in other words, what I'm saying is some lunar Sabbatists will tell you that the Sabbath is on the 7th day of pagan February, the 14th day of pagan February, the 21st day of pagan February, and the 28th day of pagan February, and then come March, and it's the same cycle again, the 7th, the 14th, the 21st, and the 28th. You see, some lunar Sabbatists will also tell you that. So they are pointing to the Gregorian calendar, you see, actually not pointing to the moon, but what's the contradiction in that? They're talking about a lunar Sabbath. So anyway, those are 3 principles that the lunar Sabbatists go by, and they only take into account the moon, you see, the rotation of the moon. Whereas for us to properly follow Yahuwah's calendar, we have to take into consideration the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the earth itself in order to properly follow Yahuwah's calendar. Okay, so you have the lunar Sabbatists out there with their doctrine concerning Shabbat, and that's certainly off. Then you have the Christian doctrine of Shabbat, and we just looked at that from that video, what they say. Now let's look at the scriptures. Let us begin to look at the scriptures concerning the Shabbat. So we'll go to Bereshit chapter 1. Bereshit chapter 1. It says, in the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And the earth came to be formless and empty, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the spirit of Elohim was moving on the face of the waters. And Elohim said, let light come to be, and light came to be. And Elohim saw the light that it was good, and Elohim separated the light from the darkness. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning the first day. And Elohim said, let an expanse come to be in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And Elohim made the expanse and separated the waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, and it came to be so. And Elohim called the expanse heavens, Shamayim, and there came to be evening, and there came to be morning the second day. And Elohim said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear. And it came to be so. And Elohim called the dry land earth, and the collection of the waters he called seas. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim said, let the earth bring forth grass, the plant that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth. And it came to be so. And the earth brought forth grass, the plant that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit, whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning the third day. And Elohim said, let lights come to be in the expanse of Shamayim, to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and for years. Now this is an interesting language right here. And Elohim said, verse 14, and Elohim said, let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens, to separate the day from the night. Now, I am pausing right here, and when we get into the scriptures concerning Shabbat, when we go even deeper in the scriptures because you do have people also. So here is another heretic doctrine that you hear about the Shabbat from people. There are people out there who are teaching that Shabbat begins at 6 a.m. or Shabbat begins at sunrise. Okay? And what they're saying is a day in the scriptures only speak of the period of sunlight, or okay, the period of daylight. What they say is a day in the scriptures only speak of the period of daylight, but that is not so. A day in the scriptures can be just the period of daylight is referred to as a day. That's the day portion of a day. That's the light portion of a day. A complete day, a total day, according to the scriptures, is a combination of the night period and the light period. Okay, according to the scriptures, a complete day, a total day, is a combination of the night period and the light period. According to the scriptures, every day begins at evening. Every day begins at evening, you see. Every day begins at sunset, according to the scriptures. Okay? So he says, and Elohim said, let lights come, verse 14, to be in the expanse of Shamayim, to separate the day from the night, the light period from the dark period. Okay? Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens, to separate the light period from the dark period, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and for years. So in verse 14 of chapter 1, the word yom is used twice. Day, so to separate the day from the night, that is to separate the light period from the dark period. But this does not mean, as some people use it to say, those who say that a day begins at sunrise, this is not what this is saying. You see, within a day, within a complete day, there is the period of light and there is the period of darkness. And as we study the scriptures, we find that even the night period is sometimes referred to as a day. I'll give you an example of that. And there are many examples, but an example of that, even with the trial of Yahusha, it was nighttime when the trial took place, but the scripture says, refer to that night period as in that day, you see. So it is used interchangeably because a day is also the combination of light period and day period. Okay. Some people are under the assumption also that a day, as in the light period of a day, consists of 12 hours. And that is also not correct. Now we find that in the book of YAHUAH chapter 11, if I'm not mistaken, where it is written that Yahusha said, aren't there not 12 hours in a day? Now, there can be two reasons why we find that in YAHUAH 11. Either Yahusha is speaking about the time of year when the equinox is equal, okay, giving us an equal 12 hours of light and an equal 12 hours of darkness, or it was put in there by the translators from a Christian perspective. Okay, so those are the two options. Either Yahusha said that, making reference to an equilateral position, or it was put in there from the Christian perspective. Okay, so those are the two possibilities. But there's only 2 times in the year where you have equal day, equal nights, right? Is that correct, family? And then from that point, and the scriptures lets us know that the day begin to decrease in her lights and increase in her lights. So as we approach winter, the day decreases in her light. And as we come out of winter and approach the spring, the day increases in her light. So you have a longer portion of day as in light period and shorter periods of night as in dark period, and vice versa. So the other doctrine that's out there is that the day begins at sunrise in the morning, and that's also not according to the scriptures. When they say that, then you have the theory that Shabbat actually begins at sunrise, or Shabbat begins in the morning, and that is not so. The scriptures is actually very clear concerning this. The scriptures tells us exactly when Shabbat begins by name. The scriptures tells us by name when Shabbat begins. And as we study the Shabbat, we will also be looking at this. So we will see from the scriptures, take out the guessing game. We will let Yahuwah tell us when the Shabbat begins. Okay? All right. Verse 15, and let them be for lights in the expanse of Shamayim to give light on the earth. And it came to be so. And Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. The greater light to rule the period of daylight, the period of light, and the lesser light to rule the period of dark, and the stars. And Elohim set them in the expanse of Shamayim to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the fourth day. So now, when you read in verse 14 through 18, some people use these verses to say that, again, a day begins with sunlight and ends at dawn. And then the new day begins again with the sunrise again. That's the doctrine of some people. But you will see that that's not what Yahuwah is saying here, because now he goes to verse 19 and he lets us know again that you have another definition of a day, which is a combination of the evening, dark period, and light period. So verse 19 says, and there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the fourth day. So a combination, a full day is a combination of light period and dark period, or dark period and light period. And the day begins at evening, as we have been seeing as we read. Verse 20. And Elohim said, let the waters teem with shoals of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth on the face of the expanse of the seas. And Elohim created great sea creatures, and every living creature that moves, with which the waters teemed, according to their kind, and every winged bird according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim baraked them, saying, bear fruit and increase, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth. Verse 23, and there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the fifth day. Again, we see that a complete day is a combination of evening and morning. And Elohim said, verse 24, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, livestock and creeping creatures and beasts of the earth according to its kind, and it came to be so. Verse 25, and Elohim made the beast of the earth according to its kind, livestock according to its kind, and all that creep on the earth according to its kind, and Elohim saw that it was good. Now verse 26, and Elohim said, let us make man in our image. Now let us here is also another matter, because this is where the doctrine of the Trinity, they use this to support the doctrine of the Trinity. But when Yahuwah says, let us, according to the contextual scriptures, family, as we read the scriptures, I just want to point this out very quickly, not going into it. But when Yahuwah says, let us, Yahuwah speaks of all of his attribute. All of Yahuwah's attribute was at work in creation. The one Yahuwah, when he showed up, he showed up. You see, just like with me, when I show up, I show up. I'm an employee, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, whatever function I perform, I am. And when I show up, all of me show up. You see, I don't forget how to be an employee. I don't forget how to be a dad to my children. I don't forget how to be a husband to my wife. I don't forget how to be a provider for my family, which is my scriptural responsibility. I don't forget none of that. When I show up, I show up. When Yahuwah shows up, he shows up. All of him shows up. So when he say, let us, he speaks to his completeness. It is Yahuwah's completeness. It is his fullness that created creation. A part of him didn't show up and leave another part. All of the one Yahuwah showed up. You see, so when Yahuwah say, let us, he speaks of his entire being. He speaks of his fullness, because if a part of Yahuwah didn't show up, then creation would be missing something. All of creation expresses all of the fullness of Yahuwah, because in creation, all of Yahuwah showed up. So he say, let us. He's not speaking to three mighty ones. He is not speaking to four or two mighty ones. We do not serve many mighty ones. We serve the one Yahuwah. And if we think that we serve many mighty ones, then we are nothing but pagans, according to the scriptures. So and Elohim said, let us make man in our image, speaking of his fullness. according to our loving kindness. So you look at creation, family, and creation speaks of Yahuwah. When you want to see the mercy of Yahuwah, you look to creation and you see the mercy in creation. You want to see the beauty of Yahuwah, you look to creation and you see the beauty of Yahuwah in creation. You want to see favor, look to creation and you find the favor of Yahuwah in creation. You want to see Yahuwah Yara, the provider, look to creation and you see the provision of Yahuwah in creation. Why is that? Because all of Yahuwah showed up. All of Yahuwah showed up. You see? All of Yahuwah showed up. Now, he says, and Elohim said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over all the creeping creatures that creep on the earth. And Elohim created the man in his image. In the image of Elohim he created him, male and female created he them. Now, again, too, you can go and look at this and you see there's a combination of singular and plural. So you say, let us, but yet it speaks of him in singular tense as in his image. You see, it didn't say in their image, but in his image. And Elohim baraked them, and Elohim said to them, bear fruit and increase and fill the earth and subdue it and rule over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over all creatures moving on the earth. And Elohim said, see, I have given you every plant that yields seed which is on the face of the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed to you, it is for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to every creeping creature on the earth in which there is life, every green plant is for food, and it came to be so. Now, this reminds me of the Christians, for example, in Timothy and in other places where Yahuwah says, he says it directly and he also says it through his servant, that all things are good for food and nothing to be rejected. Well, let's put that in context. Look at Bereshit 1:29, and Elohim said, see, I have given you every plant that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it is for food. Can we eat every green plant, family, that produces seed? No, we cannot eat. We can't go eating every green plant. You know, some stuff you eat it, it's going to turn your stomach inside out. So when he says every green plant I have given you for food, just like when he says that everything that goes about on all fours he has given for food, he's not saying everything. Every one that is for food is for food. But he didn't give you poison ivy to be eaten for food, or some poisonous plant to be eaten. Simply because it's green does not mean it is good for food. That's not what Yahuwah is saying. But those things that have been established for food, those things that he causes us to know is good for food, that he has given for food. Verse 31, and Elohim saw all that he had made, and see, it was very good. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the sixth day. Okay, now let's go to chapter 2. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their array. And on the seventh day Elohim completed his work which he had done. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Elohim baraked the seventh day, and set it apart, because on it he rested from all his work which Elohim in creating had made. Now, what's interesting about the language here concerning the seventh day, when he say he barak the seventh day, of course in translation you see the word bless, which does not belong. But when he say he barak the seventh day, the very word barak tells us what the seventh day is about. The seventh day is about worship. The word barak means to kneel or to bow, to show obeisance. You see, to esteem. When we bow, we are declaring that you are higher than I. You are to be esteemed, Yahuwah. I am low. Okay, and Elohim barak the seventh day and set it apart, because on it he rested from all his work which Elohim in creating had made. These are the birds of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that Yahuwah Elohim made earth and heavens. Now we see that the word day again, because again people make all kinds of doctrines using one words, one-liners. They're one-liner doctrines or one-word doctrine. Here we see the word day being used in a different context. These are the birds of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day. So Yahuwah speaks here now of the entire period of creation as a day. Yahuwah here speaks of the entire period of creation, which are 7 scriptural days, and actually not literal days prophetically, but he speaks of the entire period of creation as a day. You see, so we've got to be mindful. We've got to pay attention to how words are used in the scriptures. We've got to pay attention, because one word in the Abari language, you see, the nature of the Abari language is this. In the English language, we have over 2 million words and counting in the English language. And we use a lot of them and don't even realize it. You see? And some of them we might not be aware that they exist, but they're there. Simply because we don't use them, because we don't know them, don't mean that they don't exist. So in the English language, there are over 2 million invented words, and they keep inventing more. In the Abari language, there are just a few. Do you know that every word that we need to communicate is found in the scriptures? You see, people are speaking Yiddish and think they're speaking our language. You're not speaking our language. You see? There are many words that people use today when they say they're speaking Hebrew, and they think that they're speaking the language, and they're not speaking the language. These are the English, these are the Europeans that took our language, stole our language, and begin to invent words. Take, for example, the word Yaladim, or they say Yeladim. The word Yeladim is not a part of our language, but we think it's our language. Where did it come from? It came from the Yiddish invention. You see? And there are many words that people use that is not a part of our language. Every word that we need to know in order to communicate is in the Aleph Bayat. It's in the scriptures. You see? Every word is in the scriptures that we need to communicate. You see? That's our language. The scripture is our dictionary. It is our thesaurus. It is our concordance. It is our lexicon. It is everything. Everything that we need is right there. Now, you will have the Jewish people that will try to make you think you're stupid, who will try to tell you, well, listen, you weren't there, and not even just the Jewish people, but our own people. Listen to the Jewish people and then just swallow up the lies, the wicked lies, you see, because it's easier to accept falsehood than to accept truth. So when we talk to our people about the language, you have people out there teaching that nobody knows the language. We cannot speak the language. Really? You don't know the language. You are unable to learn the language. Really? Because none of us was alive then. So my friend, tell me, how can you follow the scriptures? Because the scriptures is not a modern writing. Scriptures is an ancient writing. So how can you follow the scriptures? The scriptures preserves our language. To learn the language, we must go to the scriptures, because the scriptures preserve our language. So if we want to learn the language, we've got to go to the scriptures. I didn't say go to the Bible. I say go to the scriptures. If we want to learn the language, we've got to go to the scriptures. You see, because our language is preserved through the scriptures. Okay? Now, the Sabbath day was established at creation. The Sabbath day was established at the creation. Now, we live in cycles of 7. 7 is the number of completion. So at the end of the 7th day, another cycle is completed and a new cycle begins at the end of every 7th day. People who teach the lunar Sabbath doctrine, sometimes when you come to the end of an invented cycle of 7, and another cycle is set to begin, because after the cycle of 7 ends, then you begin again with the first. But when you follow the lunar Sabbath doctrine, there are times when the 7 does not end with the first. What comes after 7, you take it and you throw it away. You see, and now I'm not going to go into all of that right now. But basically, the lunar Sabbath doctrine, the doctrine of man, you can take days and you throw it away and say, okay, let's start afresh. You see, that's not according to Scripture. Anyway, all right. So some people say that the Sabbath, let's talk about this for the person. If you have questions, you're in church, coming out of church, and you're concerned about the Sabbath. Some people will tell you that the Sabbath was given to the Jews. The Sabbath was given to the Jews. Is that true? Number one, that's not true. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details on the Jews right now, but the Jews are not the people of Scripture. I am not a Jew, would never call myself a Jew because I'm not a Jew. No, there is not a black person on the face of the earth that's a Jew. You have Jews that have black blood in them, but there is not a black person on the face of the earth that is a Jew. Okay, so I'm not a Jew. No descendants of Africa is a Jew. I know some Christians will say I'm not a descendant of Africa, I'm a descendant of America. Okay, whatever. But no descendant out of Africa is a Jew. The Jews come from Europe. The Jews come from the Caucasus. The Caucasus is the teeming ground. That's where they spread out from. So the people who reside in Europe, they traveled out of Africa northward. Mankind started out in Southeast Africa. That's where life began. That's where creation began. And man began to travel up out of Africa northward. They went up into Nubia, went on into Egypt and Somalia and different places, and began to travel. And they traveled northward, and we ended up coming into Europe and over across the Barren Straits and eventually into America. That's the exploits of mankind have taken us this far. And in the process, certain changes took place. So where everybody started out black, eventually you get a Caucasian race out of a black people, eventually, over time, over long periods of time, because of what we would call minuscule evolution or microevolution. That's where small changes occur. We didn't come from monkeys or anything like that, but we all do evolve. Okay, we all do evolve. You move from a hot climate and you live in a cool climate, you'll notice that your complexion changes. Okay, you become lighter. If you notice between summertime and wintertime, your complexion changes. You see, in the summertime, you're darker. In the wintertime, you're lighter. Well, over many, many years, and I dare say even millions of years, this change has come about, and that's how you end up with white people in the earth. Everybody came from black. Okay? So the Jews are those who left Africa and they moved into the region of the Caucasus. Eventually, they populated Europe. Eventually, those very people would come and form what we now know today as America, descendants of those very people. Okay, so the population of Europe can be attributed to the region of the Caucasus. And that's the region of the Jews. Okay, Yafat, Matzrayim, and Ethiopia is not the correct name. I forget what the proper pronunciation of that should be, but Africa is a modern name given to it by Europeans. So we are not Jews, and we should not call ourselves Jews. Okay, the word Jew is not found in the scriptures. Yeah, I said the word Jew is not found in the scriptures. What are you talking about? I see the Jew in the scripture just yesterday. As a matter of fact, I could turn to it right now and show you. Oh, how about we look at Romans chapter 2? How about we look at Revelation verse 3 and 9 and 2 and 9 and so on? Well, I said the word Jew is not found in the scriptures. I didn't say the word Jew was not found in the Bible. You see? How about in 1 Kings chapter 17? I show you. You see, it's not just the New Testament. The word Jew is found right over. I said the word Jew is not found in the scriptures. I didn't say that it was not found in the Bible. There is a difference between the Bible and the scriptures. Okay, so we are not Jews. We are Yahudi, Yahudim, Yasharal. We are Abari, you see. So that's what we are. And the word Abari also means people from the east, not people from the north, you see. That's important to note. Now, all right. So for those who say that Shabbat was given to the Jews, they're actually making a reference to the giving of Torah because they believe that the Torah was given to the Jews. Now we have a movie that's out. What is it called? Noah. And every once in a while they have to reassert or reaffirm the brainwashing. The reason why the lies continue to hold is because every once in a while they come out with something to seal the deal. You see, so they are maintaining the lie. This is the maintenance of the lie. So now we have a new movie. Over the decades, we have had several, and now the time is right for yet another one. Listen, watch the pattern, family, and you will see that every 3 to 5 years or so, they put out one. Every 3 to 5 years or so. And simply because you don't see it on regular TV, don't mean that they don't put them out. They're out there. They're still putting them out. Simply because you don't see it in theaters don't mean that they're not putting them out. They are putting them out, and they're out there, and they're doing their job. You see, every 3 to 5 years they put out one because they've got to maintain the lie. So with this movie, Noah is to bolster the lie, to keep the lie going, that the people of the book, the people of the scriptures, the people to whom the promise was given were Europeans or were white. And that's not true. It is far from the truth. Now, when we talk about these kinds of truths, people will say that we are racist. But I'm not a racist for speaking the truth. The one that goes to the extent of spending millions to invent lies, that's the racist and wicked one. So everything I've been flipped upside down, you see. Some people you encounter, even our people who are in church, will tell you that the Sabbath was given to the Jew. No, the Jew was not there when the commands was given. And the Sabbath command was not given at Mount Sinai. So what they're saying is they're making a reference to Mount Sinai when the command to keep Shabbat was reaffirmed. It was not given there. It was reaffirmed. The truths of YAHUAH have always stood ever since the existence of YAHUAH. We must understand this. People think that truth did not exist, that Torah did not exist until Mount Sinai. Is that so? Did Torah only begin to exist at Mount Sinai? No, Torah existed from the beginning because after all, Torah is YAHUAH. Torah is not an afterthought. Torah is YAHUAH. Torah has existed from the very beginning. So concerning YAHUAH, there is nothing new. The only thing new that's introduced to the picture is the people. So we have a people who are not familiar with his ways. People do not last forever. So when one generation dies out, another generation needs to be educated. So simply because YAHUAH is telling these people what his expectation is, what his commands are, does not mean that the commands are something new. And again, the people that it was given to were not Jewish people. The people that it was given to were a dark-skinned, black people, people of Yasharal, and the scriptures makes that clear. However, what was being given at Mount Sinai is not the first time that the command to keep Shabbat was given. The command to keep Shabbat was given from creation. So we see in the beginning from Bereshit chapter 1 that YAHUAH established the Sabbath day and he rested on the Sabbath day as an example to us and those who came after and before us. So you see, Adam and Kuah, they kept Shabbat while they were obedient. Hanuk kept Shabbat while he was obedient. Hanuk came long before Sinai, but Hanuk kept Shabbat while he lived. And a host of other people kept Shabbat while they lived, even before the experience at Mount Sinai. At Mount Sinai, what we have is, we have a generation of people who had been in captivity for 400 years and had forgotten about YAHUAH and his ways. They had been living in Mitzrayim for 430 years. And they had forgotten about the ways of Yahuwah. And now Yahuwah hear their cries as they are on the great burden in Mitzrayim, and he delivers them. And as he delivers them, he's now telling them, I have a place, I have a set apart place for you. I have a special place for you. And these are my expectation of you when you come into the land. Oh, that's very interesting right here. That phrase is very interesting concerning Shabbat. When you come into the land. Because a lot of people teach about Shabbat, and they forget a phrase that we find all throughout the scriptures. They forget a phrase, and it's this little phrase, when we come into the land. What am I saying now? Not what I'm saying. I'm pointing to a phrase that's in the scriptures, and we're going to look at it in a little while. When you come into the land. Family, have you paid attention to that phrase in the scriptures concerning Shabbat? Have you really ever paid attention to that phrase? You see, that's an important phrase that's in the scriptures. But how many people? Let me ask another question, family. Every word that Yahuwah uses, are they strategic? In other words, does Yahuwah waste words, or should we take every word as important? When Yahuwah speaks, does every word communicate something? Every word is important. Absolutely. Every word is important. Every word communicates a truth. Every word. If it wasn't the case, then there would not be enough books to house Yahuwah's instruction for us, yet he was able to convey his truth to us in scrolls that we can carry around, but yet it addresses every situation in our life. How could that be? Because that's the richness of his word. There is no idle words used. Every word is important. Yahuwah is skillful using words. He is the word. So how can you try even to compete with the word, with the one that is the word? Imagine somebody trying to promote themselves as the greatest orator that ever lived, the greatest speech writer and the greatest speaker that has ever lived. And his foolish pride has brought him to a place where he wants to compare himself to the very word himself, Yahuwah. No man can go up against Yahuwah and win. So Yahuwah is skilled at using words because he is the word. So every word that Yahuwah speaks is of great importance. Every word that Yahuwah speaks is of great importance. So family, when you see the phrase in the scriptures concerning any instruction that Yahuwah gives, and he talks about coming into the land, when you come into the land, make sure you don't overlook that phrase. Because there is a reason for the phrase, and there is an importance to the phrase, and there is a message to the phrase. There's a message in the phrase. There is great truth in the phrase. And there's a reason why Yahuwah uses it when you come into the land. But before we go to that phrase, I want to back up a little bit, back to the person who teaches, who is telling our people, like the pastors out there in these churches that are telling our people that the Shabbat command was given to the Jews. No, the Shabbat command was given at the beginning of creation. And while I'm speaking to the pastors and the Christian who fight against YAHUAH Shabbat, I also want to speak to the Lunar Sabbathist to let you know that Shabbat was established at creation. The cycle that governs Shabbat began with the very first day of creation. So at the very first day of creation, when was the moon created, family? When was the moon created? Was it created on the first day of creation? No, it was created on the fourth day. That's right. It was created on the fourth day. The moon was created on the fourth day. Now, the lunar Sabbathists say that, I'm going to use the word month for people to understand what I'm saying. The lunar Sabbaths say that a month does not begin until the first day of the moon. Now let me ask this question. The first day of creation, would that be the beginning of the first month? I'm using this language for people to understand me. the first day of creation, should that be considered the beginning of the first month? Would it make sense to consider the first day of creation the beginning of the first month? The correct answer would be yes, because if you're thinking of month from the perspective of Western thinking, then the first day of existence begin the first day of the month, right? Think of month just as a period of time. Okay, let me put it another way. Let me put the question another way. Would the first day of creation be considered the first day of, how should I word this? A 360-day period. In other words, what I'm trying to get out is, when do we start counting? Do we start counting when Yahuwah started creation? Let me go back to Bereshit chapter 1. I want to make sure I'm not confusing you as I try to ask this question. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And the earth came to be formless and empty, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the spirit of Elohim was moving on the face of the waters. And Elohim said, "Let light come to be." And light came to be. And Elohim saw the light that it was good. And Elohim separated the light from the darkness. And Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the first day. Right? The first day. So the first day of creation is the beginning of all things, right? That's the question that I'm trying to really get at. Maybe I don't think I was asking the question properly. Okay, so the first day of creation is the beginning of all things, right, family? Right. The first day of creation is the beginning of all things. But then, as far as the cycle of moons and year, that would not begin until the creation of the sun and the moon and the stars, which occurs on the fourth day, right? Right. So the point that I am trying to get across is this. The cycle that Yahuwah established for Shabbat did not begin with the cycle that he established that determines months and years. That initial light was Yahuwah himself when he said, "Let there be light." So when he says, "Let there be light," he was that light. The sun and the moon, which is the greater and lesser light, was not created until the fourth day. So the first month, or first moon, began on the fourth day with the creation of the moon. Okay? So the first moon began on the fourth day. So let me put it this way. The cycle of moons and years was established on the fourth day. The cycle of moon and years was established on the fourth day. Now, according to the scriptures, when was the cycle for Shabbat established? According to the scriptures, as we read in Bereshit chapter 1. The cycle was established on the first day. Because if you notice, he began to count, he said, and so and so and so and so, and evening and morning was the first day. Then it goes on, and so and so and so and so, second day, so and so, third day, so and so and so and so, fourth day, so and so, fifth day, so and so, sixth day, and then the seventh day, Shabbat. Okay? So there was never a break or a restart in the cycle as we read the scriptures. So when you come to fourth day, he didn't start over and say, "No, let me start figuring out when the Shabbat is." But the cycle for the weekly Shabbat was established with the beginning of the first day, right? So the reason why we are talking about this is because there are a lot of people out there that are confused by the doctrine of the lunar Sabbath. Because the doctrine of the lunar Sabbath says that the count of the Sabbath cycle began on the fourth day. The people who are proclaiming the lunar Sabbath doctrine, they say that the cycle, the count for the Sabbath, began on the fourth day. So my question is, and the reason why I'm asking the question is to provoke thought. And my question is that so according to the scriptures? That's how they mess it up. So you see, what they did was they took 3 days and they threw it away. You see, they took 3 days and they threw it away. And for the rest of the time, they keep doing that. Because every once in a while, when you're keeping the lunar Sabbath, you're going to get to a point where you have to throw some days away. So from the very beginning, they say that Yahuwah took 3 days and threw it away and started counting over again from the 4th day. So whatever took place on day 1, 2, and 3 did not matter. He threw them days away and he started counting. The 4th day now is the 1st day. That is the premise. That is the basis. That is the basic doctrine of the lunar Sabbath man-made blasphemy. That is the premise of that doctrine. Okay? So according to that doctrine, the count began on the 4th day. But according to the scriptures, the count began on the 1st day concerning the Sabbath. This is very important. Okay? So that's the lunar Sabbath. Now, what else do we find? The Christian and the pastor that say that the Sabbath was given to the Jew. Family, we are taking our time as we examine Shabbat here because there's a whole lot of confusion out there and there's a whole lot of people speaking and there's a whole lot of people teaching that should be keeping their mouths shut. And this is just the beginning of the matter. We're going to go far deeper than this. We're just on the surface right now. But we're going to go far deeper than this because the deception and the confusion, we find it on every level. So right now we're dealing with the lunar Sabbathists and we're dealing with the Christians. But we're going to go to a point where we're looking at the doctrines that people are teaching who say that they are serving Yahuwah. We're going to examine this. So right now we're on the surface. This is for those who are out there and they're trying to find the truth about Shabbat and they're looking for the truth, but they're hearing the lunar Sabbathist and they're hearing the Christian. Now the Christians say that Shabbat was given to the Jew. And again, let me ask this question, family. Why do they say that? Why do they say that Shabbat was given to the Jews? So, you run into people in church, oh, the Sabbath is not for us. And that's hypocrisy too, because at the same time, while they're telling you that the Sabbath is not for us, they're also telling you that Sunday is the Sabbath. You see, so that's hypocrisy also in itself. So while they're telling you that the Sabbath is not for us, they're also telling you that Sunday is the Sabbath. So there you see the hypocrisy. You see, they say the Jews are the people of the book. Now, let me ask this question, family. Let's go with that thought process for a second. Let's go with that. Let's say they say the Sabbath is for the Jew. That the Sabbath was given to the Jew. Let's say the scripture spoke about the Jews, or the scriptures speak about the Jews. Was Yahuwah speaking to some Jews in Bereshit chapter 1? Was Yahuwah speaking to some Jews in Genesis chapter 1? Were there some Jews there that he was speaking to? No. We don't remember finding any Jews in Genesis 1, do we? I didn't see any. I don't remember him telling any Jew anything. You see? Tell me something. Was Adam a Jew? Was Adam and Kua a Jew? No. No, they weren't. Wait, let's take it a step further. Because what we want is the truth, right? And we're not going to be biased as we search for the truth. Was Adam and Kua, were they Abarim, or what they say Hebrews? Were they Abarim? Was Adam and Kua Abarim? Were they Abarim? No, they wasn't. You see? So, you see, family, the point that I'm trying to get to is this. Wait, let me read what Arakud Yariah say. They say that Shabbat was given to the Jews so that they can have an excuse not to keep it. That's why they say that. So Adam and Kua was not Jew, and they were not Abarim people. What we realize is, if you could just finish this statement for me, family. So initially, Shabbat was given to blank, fill in the blank, to man, to mankind. So initially, Shabbat was given to mankind. Now, if we hear anybody today teaching that Shabbat was only given to Yasharal, though that is true, it can be misleading. Could it not be? That can be misleading, right? Yes, it can be misleading. because it does not tell the whole truth concerning Shabbat. You see, Yahuwah's intent was for all of his creation to keep Shabbat. However, mankind rebelled against Yahuwah, and he only could find one man who desired to please him and to serve him when he came looking for a man. That man was Abraham. And because of Abraham's love and commitment to Yahuwah, Yahuwah chose him and his seed after him. And that's where the Abarim people comes in. The Abarim people are the descendants, the physical descendants of Abraham. So initially, Shabbat was not given to Yahudim. Shabbat was not given to Yasharal. Shabbat was not given to the Jews. Shabbat was given to man. Man trampled over the command of Yahuwah. Yahuwah looked for one who would be willing to obey, and he found that one in Abraham. And based upon Abraham's obedience, Yahuwah chose him and his seed after him, and out of Abraham, Yasharal was chosen, because Yasharal is the seed of Abraham. Yasharal is Yaakov, who was renamed Yasharal. And why was he renamed Yasharal? Because he was disobedient. Well, not so much disobedient. Let me change that. Not so much disobedient. There's probably a better word. Disobedience plays a part. He was hard-headed. That's why he was named Yasharal. The reason why we have the name Yasharal is because we are hard-headed. We wrestle with Yahuwah. We fight with the truth. We do not easily accept the truth. You see, I saw a quote from Malcolm X once that says that, and I'm going to try to quote, the black man is such that, or the ignorance of the black man, or something he said. I don't remember exactly how he put it. The conditioning of the black man, it goes so deep that when you try to share truth with him, you've got to give him just a little bit and walk away. And basically what he was saying was, if you stand near in his face, he's going to try to fight you. You got to give him a little bit and walk away. Now, that was Malcolm X. And what he was saying was so true. But when I hear that, and when I look at that, it's not just so much either about the conditioning. It's about our very nature. It's about our very nature. We are a people that like to wrestle. We like to put out a, hey, you want to arm wrestle? You know, we like to put up challenges. Can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. There must be balance in it, you see. Yeah, so we are called Yasharal because we are a people that like to wrestle with Yahuwah. The name Yasharal actually means stiff-necked, is one of the definitions of the name Yasharal. Yaakov's name was changed to Yasharal because he wrestled with Yahuwah. He wrestled. Now, in that situation, in that wrestling, it was good. Because he was determined. He says, I'm not going to let you go until you barak me. You see, so it can be to our good and it can be to our destruction. And that's with anything, isn't it? I mean, you can have something that you enjoy. You can have maybe a piece of cake. You can have some kind of cake that you love. You just love the cake. But you can actually eat your way to hating that cake, can you not? You can eat your way to hating that cake. I remember as a child, in Jamaica they have a fruit called soursop. I see people post on Facebook sometimes about the health benefits of soursop. How it fights cancer and different things. But as a kid, there were days when we would go hungry, days at a time. And I remember one time we had no food. We had a soursop tree in the yard. There was a soursop on the tree. The birds had actually began to pick at the soursop before the soursop was fully ripened or fit to be picked. The birds had started picking on it before it started to become ripe, and then it started to become ripe, and I saw it. But by the time I saw it, one side was ripe, but because the birds had started picking on it, one side was ripening faster than the other, so it was soon to go bad. One side was soon to go bad, and the other side wasn't even ripe yet. Well, I was hungry. I saw the soursop, so what I did was I picked the soursop. I cut out the part where the birds had picked on, and I began to eat the soursop, even though it was not fully ripened. And the hardness and the ripeness kind of ran into each other at some point. And I ate the soursop. I was hungry. And by the time I got done eating the soursop, I was sick to my stomach. And from that day forward, I could not even take the scent of a soursop. So something really good became really bad to me. You see? Something really good became really bad to me. And that's with anything. Anything that we overdo, no matter how good it is, can become very bad. Anything that we overdo, I say again, anything that we overdo, no matter how good it is, we make it bad. You see? We make it bad. Okay? We make it bad. Anything that we overdo, we make it bad. Okay? But yeah, so now to the Christians who say that Shabbat was given to the Jews, number one, they say that because they don't want to keep Shabbat. That's number one. They don't want to keep Shabbat. Let me ask, what scriptures do you know of that Christians use to say Shabbat was given to the Jews? What scriptures do you know of that Christians use to say Shabbat was given to the Jews? The Christians use a scripture or a couple of scriptures to make the point that Shabbat was given to the Jews. Anyone familiar? Every day is a day of Thanksgiving. Yeah, they use that. Yes. From Shamut or Exodus 31. Yes, that's also another one. Colossians 2:16 certainly isn't saying that, and we hope to go to those scriptures again to show that, because there are people out there who desire to know the truth. You see, but when we search for the truth, we need to find the truth, the whole truth, and absolutely nothing but the truth. You see, there are some people who are giving truth mixed with some error. And there are some people who are teaching doctrines of men, like we read of in the book of YAHUAH, Isaiah chapter 29 and verse 13 the other day, where among the people of Yasharal, you had people who were teaching doctrines of error, doctrines of men, calling it the truth of Yahuwah. And you still have people doing that today. So yes, Colossians chapter 2 and verse 16 is definitely one of them, a key. In Shamut or Exodus 31 and 16, wherefore the children of Yasharal shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations. Yes, that is also one, because what they say is the people that are being spoken of here are the Jews, and they do use that one also. Yes, that's definitely one also. And Colossians chapter 2 and verse 16 is another one. Okay, now another one that they also use, family, is actually Shamut or Exodus chapter 19 or 20, along with Shamut chapter 31 and verse 16. These are scriptures that they use to say it was given to the Jews. Now, in saying it was given to the Jews, they point to the place that it was given, which is Sinai, right? They point to the place that it was given. They say the command to keep Shabbat was given at Mount Sinai. Is that true? Is it true that the first time the command to keep Shabbat was given, and that nobody, and they also say, the Christians say that no one kept Shabbat until the command was given at Mount Sinai? Is that true, family? No, it's not true. Can somebody point out an example where we see Shabbat being kept even before Mount Sinai? The Christians teaches the people in their churches that the first time the Sabbath was kept was at Mount Sinai, and at Mount Sinai, the audience was the Jews. So that's the whole package. The Christians say that the command to keep Shabbat was given at Mount Sinai, and at Mount Sinai, the audience were the Jews. Well, that's wrong, dead wrong, totally false, totally a lie. The audience was not the Jews. The audience was the people of Yasharal. The people of Yasharal and the Jews are not the same people. So the audience was the people of Yasharal, not the Jews. You see? The audience was the people of Yasharal, not the Jews. And at this time, it wasn't two houses, it was one house. Yahuwah gave these to this generation of people as a reminder. The Jews have hijacked Yasharal, but they are not Yasharal. You see, it's a situation of identity theft. They are not Yasharal. But the Christians say that the first time that the command was given, or the first time we find anybody in the scriptures keeping Shabbat, is once it was given at Mount Sinai, and it was given to the Jews, but that's not the case. Now, in Shamut, was the command to keep Shabbat already given there? As far as to this body of people, do we see anywhere in Scripture, even prior to Shamut, where Yahuwah said to this people, remember the Shabbat day to keep it set apart? Do we find that prior to Shamut chapter 19 or 20? The answer is no, right? We don't find it prior. But do we find the people of Yasharal keeping Shabbat before Mount Sinai? Before they came to Mount Sinai where the command was given? Yes, absolutely. We find them keeping Shabbat even before they came to Mount Sinai, right? Now, one example of this is in Exodus chapter 16, or Shamut chapter 16. And what this lets us know then is that the command to keep Shabbat is an everlasting command. It's a command that was established from the very beginning, the cycle beginning with the first day of creation. So the command to keep Shabbat was given in Bereshit chapter 1, Genesis chapter 1. So in Exodus chapter 16, I want to read a little bit from Exodus 16. I'm going to begin reading from verse 1. And they took their journey from Alim, and all the congregation of the children of Yasharal came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Alim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second moon after their departing out of the land of Mitzrayim. Okay, now you have the lunar Sabbathists, they try to use this verse about on the 15th day. This is when they came to the land. This is when they came to this place where they are. Now they try to use this to say, see, this is the 15th day of the moon, and Yahuwah said this is the Shabbat. Okay, and now let's continue. They try to use this to establish their doctrine. Okay, and the whole congregation of the children of Yasharal murmured against Masha and Harun in the wilderness. And the children of Yasharal said unto them, would to Elohim we had died by the hand of Yahuwah in the land of Mitzrayim, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread at the full. For you have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Then said Yahuwah unto Masha, see, I will rain bread from Shamayim for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my Torah or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Masha and Harun said unto all the children of Yasharal at evening, then you shall know that Yahuwah has brought you out from the land of Mitzrayim, and in the morning then you shall see the esteem of Yahuwah, for that he hears your murmurings against Yahuwah. And what are we that you murmur against us? And Masha said, this shall be when Yahuwah shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full. For Yahuwah hears your murmurings, which you murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against Yahuwah. And Moshe spake unto Aharon, saying unto all the congregation of the children of Yasharal, Come near before Yahuwah, for he has heard your murmurings. And it came to pass, as Aharon spake unto the whole congregation of the children of Yasharal, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the esteem of Yahuwah appeared in the cloud. And Yahuwah spake unto Moshe, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Yasharal. Speak unto them, saying, At evening you shall eat flesh, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah your Elohim. And it came to pass that at evening the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay round about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoar frost on the ground. And when the children of Yasharal saw it, they said to one another, It is manna, for they did not understand what it was. And Moshe said to them, This is the bread which Yahuwah has given you to eat. This is the thing which Yahuwah has commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man according to the number of your persons. Take you every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Yasharal did so, and gathered some more, some less. And when they did meet it with an omer, he that or measured it with an omer, he that gathered much and nothing over, and he that gathered little and no lack, they gathered every man according to his eating. And Moshe said, Let no man leave it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moshe, but some of them left of it until the morning, and it bred worms, and stank, and Moshe was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omer for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moshe. And he said unto them, This is that which Yahuwah has said. Tomorrow is the rest of the set apart Shabbat unto Yahuwah. Bake that which you will bake today, and seed that which you will seed, and that which remains over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moshe bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. And Moshe said, Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto Yahuwah. Today you shall not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day for to gather, and they found none. And Yahuwah said unto Moshe, How long refuse you to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for that Yahuwah has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide you every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. And the house of Yasharal called the name thereof manna, and it was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. Okay, so here in Shammut chapter 16, we see that there was an expectation of the people. Now they're in the wilderness, and there's something else that we must also pay attention to in this passage. Let me ask the question. In Shammut, Exodus chapter 16, was Yasharal being governed by someone, or were they being governed by Yahuwah? No, they weren't being governed by anyone, right? They were being governed by Yahuwah, right? That's important. Okay, that's important. All right, they were being governed by Yahuwah. Now, when Yasharal is being governed by Yahuwah, and this is something that we're going to see later as we study the scriptures concerning Shabbat. When Yasharal is being governed by Yahuwah, there are absolutely no reservations concerning his expectation of his people to keep his appointed times and his feast. We will find in the scriptures that when Yasharal is being governed by Yahuwah, there are absolutely no reservations concerning his expectation for us to keep his appointed times and his feast. However, let me ask this other question. When we find Yasharal in captivity, for example, when the people of Yasharal were in Mitzrayim and they wanted to worship Yahuwah, what was the request made to Pharaoh? The scripture tells us to study line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, rightly applying the word of truth. The request was, let my people go, and there was a reason. What was the reason for the request? He gave the reason. He said, let my people go. This was what Yahuwah told him to tell Pharaoh. He said, let my people go so that we can go into the wilderness and worship. Right? Yes. Let my people go so that we can go into the wilderness and worship. Wait. According to the Christian doctrine, you see, we are still affected by Christian doctrine, because a lot of people out there teaching stuff, they're teaching about the feast, and they're teaching about Shabbat, and they're teaching about this, and they're teaching about that, and they don't realize that they're still being affected by Christian doctrine. So how many people do you know that are out there teaching that we can absolutely do everything in Torah on the Pharaoh? Are we living on the Pharaoh? Let me ask this, family. Are we living on the Pharaoh currently? Are we living on the Pharaoh? Yes, we are. We are living on the Pharaoh. We are living on the Pharaoh. Now, the example that Yahuwah gave us every time. Okay, let's take one more example. Maybe somebody might say, oh, you're using one scripture to establish nonsense. Let's take one more example. How about the prophet Nahumyahu, who they call Nehemiah? What was his situation? What exactly was his situation? Was he in captivity? His life story, what was that about? Yasharal and those that were with him. All right, let me just say it. Let me just say it. So here's another example. We had Nahumyahu, right? Nahumyahu was a wine taster for the king. Who was it? Xerxes? Even though that's not his proper name, I'm just going with the Yiddish stuff. But he was a wine tester for the king. And Yahuwah spoke to him. Yahuwah put in him a desire to seek him. He put in him a desire to turn the heart of his people back to Yahuwah. Now, what was his request to the king, family? What was Nahumyahu or Nehemiah's request to the king? Did he request from the king that, yo, you know what, king? Allow us to set up shop in your country and let us rebuild the Haykal right here so we can worship Yahuwah? Was that his request to the king? Or did he seek favor from the king to say, you know what? Will you allow us to go back and rebuild the walls of Yerushalayim, rebuild the Haykal, and worship Yahuwah in a set-apart place? Is that what he did? Which one did he do? Did he ask for a request to set apart worship in a defiled place, or did he request to go to the set-apart place and reestablish worship? The latter, right? The latter. That's the same thing we find in the book of Shamut, from Shamut chapter 5, right? The same thing we find. There's a reason for this, family. Now, remember the phrase that I talked about earlier, where Yahuwah says, when you come into the land, or something like that? That phrase, we're going back to that phrase, okay? We're going back to that phrase. There is a reason why Yahuwah uses that phrase. And the true prophets of Yahuwah understood the reasoning. So when they went before their oppressors, they didn't ask the oppressor for permission to worship in their land. They asked the oppressor to let them go so that they can go and worship Yahuwah where they are being ruled and governed by Yahuwah and by the people that Yahuwah has established to rule over his people, to lead his people. Now, I don't want to use the terminology rule over concerning those that Yahuwah has established, but for those that Yahuwah has chosen to lead his people. You see, he put them in a neutral place, not under the hand of the oppressor. We must understand that, because if we don't understand that, we will misrepresent the truths of Yahuwah concerning everything in the scripture. A whole lot of people, you have people so twisted they call America the promised land. I hear people who are supposed to be people of Yasharal saying that nonsense. What kind of madness is this? You see, that's an example of zeal without knowledge. How do we get knowledge? How do we get knowledge? By committing ourselves to seeking for Yahuwah with our whole heart. Now, how do we seek for Yahuwah with our whole heart? Where do we look for him? Is it a situation where he's trying to play peekaboo from behind the closet door? No. We seek for him in his word. We seek for him in the scriptures. And if we're going to seek for him in our whole heart, then we've got to allow context to give understanding of his expectation. We have got to allow context to give an understanding of his expectation. Okay? Now, we went to Shamut, Exodus chapter 16, for the Christian who is hearing that nobody kept Shabbat. What did those men who came here and those people who came here, what did they profess to be? They profess to be the people of the book and that this is the promised land. So when our people go talking about America as the promised land, guess what they're repeating? They're repeating his doctrine, his lies. You see? So we diligently seek him by seeking his word, the scriptures. Study it line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, rightly applying the word of truth, knowing that no word is wasted, but every word is of significance. Boy, I can't wait to get to the meat of this. But I need to make sure that for the person who is just coming to a knowledge or seeking for the truth, I need to address some basic stuff. So I'm still trying to make sure I don't leave the person who is coming out of church behind. I'm trying to slow down a little bit. So we went to the book of Exodus to show that the expectation to keep Shabbat did not begin in chapter 21. Did not begin at Mount Sinai. And what took place at Mount Sinai was not something, no Jews was present at Mount Sinai. It was the people of Yasharal that was standing there. It was the people of Yasharal that was commanded to set themselves apart. It was the people of Yasharal that was commanded not to touch the mountain. It was the people of Yasharal when Yahuwah said that I want to speak to my people face to face. The people, when they saw the smoke and the fire and the cloud, they cried out and they said, listen, we don't want to talk to him, Masha. You go talk to him. You just relay the message. We don't want to talk to him. That wasn't the Jews. That was the people of Yasharal. But there was an expectation for them to keep Shabbat even before that moment. Do we find that expectation? Did Yahuwah express that expectation while they were in Mitzrayim? There's a reason why I'm asking this question. And I'm going to name the individual that I hear proclaim this doctrine. There's a gentleman on YouTube. What's his name? Yakaziel. Yakaziel's doctrine is you got to keep Shabbat perfectly. You got to keep Torah perfectly in order to be delivered. That's what his initial doctrine sounded like. You got to keep Shabbat perfectly in order to be delivered. May I ask this question, family? What's wrong with that doctrine? According to Scripture, what's wrong with that doctrine? Can we keep Shabbat perfectly when we as a people are not ruling ourselves? Yahuwah is not ruling over us? No, we can't. Can we keep Shabbat perfectly when we are captives in a foreign land? Can we keep Torah perfectly when we are captives in a foreign land? No, we can't. But his doctrine, and he used out of context scriptures to push this doctrine, but it's a man-made doctrine. It's not truth. It's a man-made doctrine. It is not truth. But amazingly, a lot of people follow it. Well, let me say, maybe a lot of people follow him and others like him that say these things. We find no scripture where Yahuwah tells his people to keep Torah perfectly in the land of their captivity, because they weren't sent into their captivity to keep Torah perfectly. That's not why they were sent into captivity. Every time that Yasharal was sent into captivity, they were sent into captivity because they failed to keep Torah. They failed to see the beauty of the opportunity that they had to have Yahuwah ruling over them and for him to set up people who will guide them. They failed. They took it for granted. So what he would do is he would strip that from them in hopes that they would be repentive, that they would miss what they had and desire to return to him, that their hearts would return to him.